Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, everyone. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. If you've been watching for the last few months, you may recall that I presented a layout design for a very long basement, 68 feet long, and that layout design included a complex passenger terminal. Well, the client for that design has commissioned me to construct the complex pointwork leading into that terminal. So let's just go through the steps involved in building it. If you're interested in something similar yourself, be sure to stay tuned to the end and I will let you know how you can also order one. But in the meantime, let's just turn the camera around and get to work. A few days ago, I received my most complex fast tracks jig to date. It is the number 8 double slip over. It allows me to build number 8 double crossovers, but with slip switches at one or both ends instead of regular turnouts. This will enable me to build the complex junction for a layout design that I completed a while ago and which I now have the order for some of the turnouts. You may notice that it already looks a little bit dirty. That is because I made a start on the formation yesterday. So let's head over to my workbench and take a look at the progress. Well, here is yesterday's progress. You can see the full extent of the formation. It's still in two pieces at the moment. I'm not going to solder this joint in the middle until everything else is built, because once the two halves are combined, that will make it a lot more difficult to maneuver. As you can see, I've already finished the crossing bit in the middle, and I've got all the outside rails, the stock rails and the frogs at both ends of the formation. This end requires a single slip and a regular turnout, and the other end requires two double slips. Today I'm going to finish the inside of the turnout. That's fairly straightforward, and I'm going to work on the inside bits for the double slips. Well, I had another session out here the next day where I got most of the insides of the three slips done. The two doubles here and the single over there. I've got the 4 diamond rails and the K rails, and I've got the throw bars for the moving frogs in the centre all done. The next task is to work on the switch points. There's a lot of them. I'm just going to quietly get on with it and I'll see how far I get. I have now finished all the point rails for the double slips, so all I have to do now is finish off the single slip portion. Shouldn't take me too long. I've already got a lot of the pieces cut, because whenever I had pieces that were identical to the double slip, I cut enough for the singles as well. I said I didn't think it would take very long. I didn't time it, but only a few minutes have passed and I now have the single slip finished as well. So all I really need to do now is to cut all the electrical gaps. But before I do any of the gapping, I've still got 2 more standalone single slips to build, so I'm going to get on with those next. I'm not going to join the two halves just yet, because once I've done that, it'll be a lot more difficult to hold and a lot more prone to damage. Well, here is the formation with the two halves soldered together and installed in my test rig. It just seems to have taken forever because there are just so many different routes that I have to test. I think I have systematically tested every route now, and I had no derailments other than the one where I forgot to pin one of the sets of switch points. Anyway, that test has now been completed, so the only thing I have to do now is install the wood ties. This afternoon I finally got all the ties glued on to the double slip over. Here is the one end of the formation, all ready to be packed up for shipping. I've still got to build the double junction that goes on the near end of it and connects it to the main line. That is just 2 number 10 left-hand turnouts and a single slip. So that will be a lot easier than what I've already done. I already have all 3 components all ready to go in skeleton form. So what I've got to do next is print out a full-size track plan for that area and then assemble it on that, just to make sure I get the geometry right. Here is my full-size template. It's on 9 sheets of paper. The double slip over that's already finished has been positioned accurately. I've also added the single slip and the two number 10 turnouts. They all need trimming. I'm going to join these three pieces together so that the two turnouts have the rails end at the electrical gap for the frog for the single slip. Here is the complete formation with the double junction, the two number 10 turnouts, the single slip, and then the double crossover leading into the 6-track passenger terminal. This track at the back also gets another double slip, and that ladder continues on that side. And these are the two main lines bypassing the station running off the front. There is a tie in the middle here which is soldered to the one part of the junction and will actually splice the joint. That will then be soldered up solid once the formation is installed permanently onto the client's railroad. There's also an extra long tie across the end at that end and at this end, and those will be cut away once again after installation. I put them in now at this stage just to add some rigidity to the formation to minimize the chance of it getting damaged before installation. Well, that's all for this week's video. Hope you enjoyed this video, found it useful or interesting or both. At the time of recording this, I have not yet added the slip over to my online store, but I will make sure it's done by the time that this video goes live. So if anyone out there is in need of something similar, you know where to find me. So I guess it's time to say goodbye for this week. Hope to see you back next week. And in the meantime, thanks for watching.